My amplified unit, salute! It's early in the morning. I don't have a lot of time to cut this show for you guys today. I don't even have a coffee. What is happening in the world? We're in the coffee bar and BC don't have a coffee. But there was no way you guys were not going to get an amped up podcast for Friday, October 20th, 2023. We have to end the week the right way. And there's still going to be an upload tomorrow, obviously, the SmackDown review. You guys will be getting that amped up podcast within the next 24 hours. But it's Friday. We got to give you something. And I got some good stories compiled. So even though I don't have a coffee right now, feeling a little out of the norm, before we go out in the world and whoop that ass and conquer the business that needs to be attended to, you guys are getting some pro wrestling talk. And we are going to discuss the words of Chris Jericho. All the headlines are talking about Jericho's response to Tony Khan completely unraveling this past week after the NXT AEW battle that saw AEW lose to NXT and Tony Khan completely unraveled. There's no other way to put it. So Chris Jericho, one of the locker room leaders, him, Bryan Danielson, and Mox, for those that don't know. Because when you hear locker room leaders, you think it's the Kenny Omegas and the Young Bucks because they have the fancy titles. No, it's actually Jericho, Mox, and Danielson. So here's one of the locker room leaders finally speaking out, or in response of and to Tony Khan's words over the last 7 days. Now, even though that got all the headlines, it's what Jericho said about NXT defeating AEW. That is where he says a lot, and it's typical Jericho. I was going to tell you a little bit, right? But it's a cold open teaser for a reason. You gotta tune into the rest of the podcast coming up. We'll go over exactly what he said, and I'll let you guys decide. Is this Jericho asking WWE not to do what they always do? I'll explain coming up in today's Amped Up podcast, but Jericho says a lot about that NXT AEW battle and subsequent loss to NXT. We'll talk about that. Speaking of AEW, I want to go over the rating. It's in for Dynamite. Now, no, they didn't hit 1 million viewers, but BC's going to be very positive on this number, and there's a big reason why. And if you were able to catch yesterday's podcast, you probably know what that reason is. AEW did something incredible last night, something I've been asking them, or Wednesday night, something I've been asking them to do since they started this company. And when you do that, you will build your audience because you are building a television show. We'll talk about what that was. AEW Dynamite, the number. Or also, if I can stick with the Dynamite, something happened on Wednesday night where a literal legend, like we throw that word around a lot, but when it comes to pro wrestling, legend will have several pictures to the side of that word, right? Several actual legends. This particular person you could easily put up on that page, and I don't think many would have an argument. This dude just announced his retirement. And I wanted to talk about this in yesterday's podcast, but if you caught yesterday's show, it was so packed, man. It was like, when we say packed, stacked, and jacked, yesterday I had to take things out of that show. I don't know if you guys realize that. You may have caught a lot of like little edits. There was a lot that had to be taken out because it was about an hour and 45-minute show. I wanted to keep it around an hour 15 at max. So it was that packed of a show, and I believe I forgot to even mention this, but I will not miss the opportunity to thank this dude in this podcast. So that's coming up as well. And Crown Jewel, there is a ton of talent that is not going. Now, a lot of you guys may look at a lot of these superstars as the B team. Oh, they're not going to be there anyway. They're the B team. And I'm not talking Bo Dallas and... Who was it? Wasn't there a team called the B Team? Bo Dallas and who was it? Not Alex O'Reilly. Was it Curtis Axel? Kurt Henning's kid? Mr. Perfect's kid? Maybe it was Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel. I don't know. If you remember, jot it down below. But I'm not talking about that B Team. there's a bunch of what you would call mid-carders and people that kind of sit at catering every Monday or Friday. Yeah, they're not going to be there. But there's also top stars that are not making the trip to Crown Jewel Saturday, November 4th, just a week or two away. So I have a complete list of those names, and I'll tell you exactly why. It's definitive. They are not going to be there. So we'll discuss all that. And SmackDown's preview for later tonight. So even though I don't have a lot of time, there's a lot to talk about. We got to jump into it. I'd say grab your beverages, but I don't even have one. So just lock in your earbuds, smash that up if you don't mind. Come on back. Let's get amplified. All right, guys, so let's start with the Crown Jewel story because this is pretty big. Usually WWE sends the cavalry for these shows, all right? This is the big Saudi Arabia shows. The country pays $40 to $50 million to WWE each time they go and put on one of these Crown Jewels or superstar spectacles, whatever they're calling it. Every single time they're in Saudi, they get 40 to 50 million because we just found out they also cover the production cost. So that's why we say 40 to 50. We don't even know the final tally. We just know it's tens of millions of dollars every single time they just show up. So every time you see one of these Crown Jewels, man, it's like the Grinch that stole Christmas and that evil grin, or Home Alone, when the dude at the hotel finds out that Kevin McAllister used a fraudulent credit card. It's not his. And that evil smile, right? That's Vincent Kennedy. That's going to be Ari Emanuel. That's going to be Triple H, Paul Levesque McMahon, Nicholas Khan. They're all going to be smiling ear to ear, man, because they just made a ton of money. The second their feet touch ground in Saudi, here comes the money! And I'm not talking Shane McMahon, man. It's going to be raining in Saudi, but it's going to be raining a lot of money. I don't think you guys realize how much they make every time they go there. It's wild to even conceive that they make that much money. And that's why you hear when people like Brock Lesnar get $1 million just for going to these shows. One night you make $1 million. But that's what people like Brock get. I believe Roman now gets that as well. I think he's at least conquered the 750,000 tier. I think he's probably by now making $1 million. Like, I'll go over if you give me the $1 million. But it's peanuts when you're making that much. And on the low end, right? The mid-carders, because they send the cavalry. Everybody usually goes, or a ton. Most of that roster goes to these shows. Even if they're just using these weird little 40-man battle royals, but just to show the country, because they're paying so much money. See, we're bringing everybody. We're sparing no expense when it comes to the roster. So even if you're mid-card, or you're not even used on these shows, you're just in catering, eating the triple layered moose cake, and you show up for 90 seconds in a battle royal, they just made $100,000. A lot of these dudes, bare minimum, are making $100,000 just for showing up. So it's a big money day for everybody. So what's the point, right? This year, for this show, I should say, it's the complete opposite. A less is more approach, and they're going to hope that the country doesn't notice they're looking a little thin on the roster this time. Because, guys, WWE is actually putting on a house show in the States on the same exact day of Crown Jewel. They're double dipping is what we call that in the business. They're double dipping. They said, yeah, we're making the 40, 50 million over here, but maybe we can squeeze out another $500,000 over here. Who knows? Let's see what Rochester has, because that's what they're doing, man. WWE is running a house show on that same day, the Blue Cross Arena, Rochester, New York. Now, I'm not saying it's Madison Square Garden or even the Barclays Center, but it's New York. It's usually a vivid, hot, it's a distinctive crowd, and it's going to be loud. They're usually packing the house. They know they can make a buck in New York. So they're going over to Rochester. This is the first time that WWE has double dipped like this on a Saudi show. So that's first and foremost why this is huge. But listen to the names that are on this, right? You think it's all going to be just the B team. Not so fast. First of all, I'll give you what they're advertising. They're advertising a double main event. Ricochet versus Shinsuke Nakamura versus Intercontinental Champion, the Ring General, Gunther. So Gunther's IC title is on the line, but it's not at the premium live event pay-per-view. It's not in Crown Jewel. They're not sending Gunther over. Gunther will be in Rochester against Nakamura and Ricochet. Triple threat for the IC title. The flip side of that double main event is current NXT champion for the ladies, Becky Lynch, versus Tiffany Stratton. And, it's a triple main event, no? It's a triple main event. The ladies have 2 of the 3 matches in the main event. So they're throwing a triple main event. So Tiffany Stratton's going to get some shine. This is no harm, no foul. Tiffany wouldn't have been in at Crown Jewel anyway. So Becky Lynch and Tiffany have had 2 really good matches. In case you guys don't watch NXT, that's fine. But try to watch those matches if you ever have time. Tiffany Stratton is one of the best female wrestlers on the planet today. I'm already gracing her with that title. And she declares that she has so much more to improve on. I'm not seeing it, but there's always room for improvement, I guess. So keep trucking, girl. But this Tiffany Stratton's the real deal. Her and Becky have really good matches. Rochester's gonna rock with that match. So you have the triple threat for the IC title, Ricochet, Shinsuke, and Gunther. And then you have Becky and Tiffany. Tiffany already doing a main roster house show. That's big. And then the third match, the third part of this triple main event is Charlotte Flair versus WWE Women's Champion Io Sky with Damage Control in her corner. Dakota Kai and Bayley. That's a lot of talent that's not going over to Saudi. And then also they have advertised... So yeah, we said they also have the Brawling Brutes are going to be on this card in Rochester. So Brawling Brutes not in Saudi. Good. Maybe we won't have one of those corny 40-man battle royals or a freaking 10-man tag. Save that for Survivor Series. What a concept. Brawling Brutes will be in Rochester. Grayson Waller will be in Rochester, not Crown Jewel. The Street Profits. So I don't know if I don't see Bobby Lashley in that, but the Profits will be in Rochester. Carlito, Rochester. Kofi Kingston, Rochester. Omos, Rochester. Okay, I haven't seen Omos in a minute. Okay, that you would expect. Or maybe not. Well, actually... They like to showcase the really larger dudes in so when they get off that plane, everyone's like, whoa. So I'm actually a little bit surprised that Omos, even if he wasn't really a big part of the card, that Omos wasn't a presence in Crown Jewel or in Saudi. But they're going to go Omos Rochester. So guys, anyway, and many more is in caps too with the official WWE announcement of this show. So there's a lot more. Obviously, they're going to fill that card up because a lot of those individuals are in the triple threat main event. So you got to have at least another 5 matches. So you have about another 6 to 10 superstars, bare minimum. So I wonder who they're going to be. So pretty big news. I'm not saying you're going to use everybody at Crown Jewel anyway, but that's not the point. Usually a lot of these individuals make that trip. They really want to have that presence when they get off these planes, and they really want to show the Saudi government that, you're getting your money's worth. But more than anything, guys, it's not even just because a lot of roster sits home as well. I'm not saying the whole roster goes to these shows. That would be you need like 5 planes. But to run a show on the same day, that's ballsy, man. Like, you got to have all hands on deck with those Saudi shows. I wonder if they're starting to see like a lot of people don't want to make the trips, and it's not even about the money for some of these individuals. So they're like, all right, well, you know what? we can double dip by using the individuals that don't want to show up in Saudi. We can still put them to work and maybe gain a buck or two. Still, it's odd not to have all your hands on deck. On deck. Don't have all your hands on Becks. Oh boy, that would be a natty situation from Monday. But I still would think you want all your agents, your producers, all of that. Wouldn't you want? I don't know, man. I don't know. That's big. They're going to double dip. We'll see if it goes off flawlessly. They used to do this all the time with just house shows. They did it way more in the past. The last 10, 20 years, they don't really do it anymore. But they used to run, especially on Friday, Saturday, they would run like double shows. So like Friday, it would be two different shows at the same time. Saturdays and Sundays, there'd be a show at like 12 and then a show at like 7. Different towns. Sometimes it was the same roster having to do both shows. And that's how Vincent Kennedy and a lot of these companies would make their money. They would double dip. Anyway, guys, big story developing there. Just thought I'd let you know in case some of your favorite wrestlers were in that list and you're like, what the fuck? You got nothing? These are champions, man. Where's Gunther? Where's Becky? No Charlie? Why is Omos not on my pay-per-view? I don't think anybody's saying that. All right, guys, let's go over to AEW. We'll get to the Jericho comments in just a little bit, but I want to talk their rating from Dynamite. And before I even talk that, if we're going to discuss Dynamite, I have to give a big shout out to an individual that just announced their retirement on Wednesday night. And that is Sting! Okay, nobody can do the Tony Schiavone way, but Sting! An icon personified, a legend amplified, a dude that a lot of you guys, unfortunately, probably just started to get to know during the Attitude Era with the Crow individual, right? That character of the Crow. And he comes down from the rafters. A lot of people just know that Sting, but I was very, very fortunate. See, I was going to say I was fortunate to witness this individual early on, but I was fortunate to be captivated, like so many others. Fortunate to be captivated by this dude early on. Like late 80s, early 90s-ish time period. And Sting, Ric Flair, Big Van Vader, Cactus Jack, Ron Simmons, Paul E. Dangerously with his huge Zach Morris phone. You guys now know him as Paul Heyman. But old school WCW, back in the Super Brawl days, Starrcade, Halloween Havoc, Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, is how it was billed back in the day. Man, Surfer Sting is what we all called him anyway. I don't know if he ever really called himself that. I don't know. We all called him Surfer Sting. He was this California dude. He had the blonde hair, the bleach. But you could say bleach, blonde hair, and the colorful. Him and Warrior at a time where you didn't see that much color pop off from individuals. They were so colorful. Ultimate Warrior was in WWF at the time, just rocking it. I mean, he was taking that company by storm, and you always had these neon colors. And over in WCW, it was Sting taking the company by storm with all these neon colors. And the irony in this, I don't know if a lot of you guys know this or not, little tidbit if you didn't. Sting and Ultimate Warrior were actually a tag team when they got into the business. They were called the Blade Runners. It was very short-lived. Their characters, their personalities just clashed. More so, as much as I love the dude, much love and respect way up high. But Ultimate Warrior, he had a little bit of a dude, right? Maybe you've heard. A little bit of an attitude, and he was hard to kind of deal with. And Steve Borden, Stinger, he found that out pretty quickly and they just parted ways. Warrior just wanted to be on his own anyway. He never wanted to be around people, just wanted to do his own thing, wanted to make as much money as possible. Ended up being the best thing for them. They both went to a separate company. Warrior ended up going to WWF, Stinger to WCW, and they both became the guy in the company. Even at a time when Hogan was in WWF, Warrior defeated him at WrestleMania 6 to win that championship. Short-lived again, but that's another story for another podcast. But over in WCW, Stinger was hoisting up his championships over the likes of Ric Flair, Big Van Vader, and so many others. So I was very fortunate to be captivated by this dude early on, and he just never stopped. I mean, this is a dude, and it's very rare to see somebody get this much notoriety, this much success, this much fandom, and not be in WWF at all. And I'm talking before the match with Triple H. What was that? WrestleMania 32, maybe? 31, 32, something like that. 31, maybe. That was San Francisco, right? Anyway, even way before that, Sting he kept on, just like Chris Jericho. They keep reinventing themselves, and the next version not only gets over with fans, but somehow becomes the best version, and then they do it again and again. I don't know how Jericho does it. Stinger was the same way. Stinger could be Surfer Sting and then all of a sudden become a Crow character that doesn't even speak. And he somehow got more over than Surfer Sting to a lot of fans. And then he goes in the Impact and you see a hybrid, a little bit of the old school Surfer Sting added into the Crow Sting. And he pretty much just completely owned Impact. I mean, there was no character or personality, I should say, that was going to override Stinger. Anyway, there was no way that I was going to miss an opportunity to speak so highly of a dude that I respect so highly, and that is Sting, Steve Borden, who just this past Wednesday, if you've been living underneath a rock, announced his retirement. And I wanted to talk about this on yesterday's podcast, but again, it was just so packed. It was just several things got taken out of that upload. And on top of that, I just forgot to talk about some key things from yesterday's podcast that I wanted to talk about. Unfortunately, Sting was one of them, but he announced his retirement. And even though you knew it was coming, because yes, obviously you've seen him the past year, especially, he's lost several steps. He's 64, correct? 64, 60, we'll say 64 years old, I believe. How much more can you do at his age with what he's been doing? Jumping through tables, jumping off of balconies. At 64. I mean, if you've already lost a few steps, what do you think's going to happen after you leap off of that balcony through two or three tables down below? What happens when you jump off that apron through the commentary table or a couple 2-3 tables down below? Eventually, it's going to get caught. It's going to catch up to you, right? And that's what happened recently when he jumped off that apron, tried to go through those double tables, and he caught it I thought he literally... I thought that was his last match in wrestling. That was it. I thought he injured himself that badly. He was all busted up. He was off to the side. You see the referee throwing up the X. The medical's checking with him. Minutes later, he's in the ring with the finish. That's Sting, man. But eventually it catches up to you, man. 60, and that's what I mean. There's no quitting this dude. He just keeps going and going. Ric Flair does it kind of loudly, right? Ric Flair never wanted to give it up loudly. I think is Flair in his 70s, by the way? Maybe he's not even in his... I think Flair might be in his 70s, like Vincent Kennedy McMahon and Hulk Hogan. But still, Flair just kept going loudly, like, I'm wrestling again. No, now I'm retiring. Now I'm coming out of retirement. I'm wrestling. He did it loudly, so people were like, oh my goodness, give it up, dude, will you? Like, dude, you can't do it anymore. Look at you. You're a shell of what you once were. This, that, and the other thing. And Flair's like, my life, I'm doing it my way. More power to him, by the way. But Sting did it quietly, right? Sting's 64. You don't really talk about the age. You don't really talk about Sting losing a few steps. You don't talk about Sting retiring because he does it so quietly. And just with the makeup and the way that his getup is, with the jacket and everything, you don't really see that he's not the same figure per se as in years past. It just, I mean, you're still seeing the character Sting, almost like you would see 20 years ago. And the things that he does in the ring, you're like, all right, that's not half bad. So Sting stuck around quietly, Ric Flair kind of loudly, but both legends just couldn't really give it up. And this past Wednesday, Sting just said, he says, the reason we can't give it up is the roar of the crowd. It's you guys. It's the spectacle. It's the lights. It's the center stage. It's all of it. But you know what? Even though I've done this in the past, but I said with Sting, the one thing is for sure is never say, or no, what'd he say? The one thing about Sting is nothing's for sure. Right? That's what he said he said that in the past so many times. He said that when he retired. He said the one thing that is for sure when it comes with Sting to Sting is nothing's for sure. But this time on Wednesday, he said the one thing for sure from here on out when it comes to Sting is that Revolution, I'm retiring. So he is not leaving any room for any secondary thoughts to creep in or any possible coming out of retirement party. He's saying at Revolution, that's it. So that'll be the big send-off. I love this because they do this in NASCAR, and I like it. They'll announce their retirement a whole year in advance, right? So they'll say, this is my final year. And it's a way to make your rounds literally. In NASCAR, it's literally your rounds and around and around. Many times every Sunday afternoon, but to make their rounds to every city that they go to, town that they go to, track, and everybody gets to show that outpouring of love and appreciation. Baseball does that a lot too, actually. I should say that. A lot of baseball players will say it's my final year, right? Mariano Rivera. And then he got injured during practice, fucking trying to catch balls in the outfield. So then he had to do another year. But baseball, they'll do the same thing. Well, they'll announce it because they go to so many towns, so many cities, and it's a way for everybody to show, to get to see them play one more time. I like how Sting announced the retirement way in advance. He has several more months this year. I don't know if he's going to wrestle again or not. I think he is. He's scheduled coming up, right? I think he's in a match. The point is, he's got several more months this year, and then you leak into next year. I believe Revolution is March 5th-ish, or usually around March. So WrestleMania season-ish. So you get to see a lot of Sting next year. So this is a way for everybody to appreciate him even more. Appreciate Steve Borden Stinger even more than we already did. So I like announcing this way in advance. So I just like everything every way that it was done. And the speech was so emotional. You kind of knew where he was headed with it, but you're like, no, man. Like, even though you know he's probably heading toward retirement, again, with Sting, you don't really discuss it. Some individuals, you talk about it. Needs to happen, right? Other individuals, no, it doesn't actually need to happen. Just stop jumping off balconies and aprons and the tables and just be Sting. You don't need to do all that. So anyway, Stinger, man, salute. Thank you for an amazing career. Can't believe that I have to give this speech on Sting without a coffee to give a proper salute, but I will on camera when I have my next coffee. Stinger, thank you for the years, the memories, everything, man. One of the best in the business personified. And again, we throw around the term legend, but with Sting, he's literally a legend. Like, if his picture was next to the word, I wouldn't bat an eyelash. I wouldn't blink an eye. In disagreement, wouldn't happen. I'd say, yeah, that's one of many, but that's definitely a legend. And what he's done for this business without WWE, WWF, whatever you want to call it. You know, that one match with Paul Levesque McMahon, which was just petty Paul. He just wanted to beat one of the top WCW guys who kind of gave him the side eye when he was in WCW, right? I mean, he always wanted to work with the top guys, and they wanted nothing to do with him. So when he got a hold of Ric Flair, he made sure that they were buddy-buddy. When Sting came over and he found out he couldn't be buddy-buddy with Sting, he wanted to beat him at WrestleMania, and that's what happened. You know, and Sting should have never really lost that match. If you were going to do Rock and Triple H the next year or something like that, because they were trying to set up Paul Levesque and Stephanie McMahon and Rock and Ronda Rousey, I think it was in that same day. But unless you have that locked, Stinger can't lose that match. And then I think Sting did something with, who was it, Sethington Rollins, and then that was pretty much it. They didn't want to call him back, guys. Do you guys realize? Sting didn't wrestle more in WWE because they didn't want him back. He was too damn good, and they didn't create him. But you know what? Sting said, I don't need WWE. I'm going to be one of the best ever. A legend personified to the most amplified of measurements, and I'm going to do it without you. Sting did it, what many would say, the hard way. And sometimes the hard way is the most gratifying. To Sting, salute. Now, if you're wondering AEW's rating this week, because this comes off the heels of their 600,000 viewership last week, head-to-head on a Tuesday night against NXT. We're going to talk about that when we get to the Jericho statements about that battle, about that war. Wait till you hear what Jericho has to say. But last Tuesday, they did do battle, and Dynamite pulled 600,000. Now, I said that that's not actually that. It's not good, but it's not bad. You went over on Tuesday. I understand it was a themed show. But you take your 600,000 and you run, because they were only getting 800,000 before that, guys, a week previous. Many weeks over the last several months, they were only in the 800,000s. Listen, you moved nights because of the Major League Baseball playoffs. You took 600,000, now run. Your competition, WWE's NXT brand, they stacked the deck against you. You pulled 600,000, just go. Don't yap on your way out. Don't look back. Act like you just robbed the bank. Run and don't look back. Instead, Tony Khan just kept looking back, kept yapping away about how they beat him because of this, and he kept getting salty, and he kept throwing these little toddler digs at Vincent Kennedy, Paul Levesque McMahon, WWE, John Cena, Undertaker. Again, we'll discuss that. But all of these digs and everything, I'm like, what are you doing? 600, it's not that bad. You're going to face them again. I think their next battle is next month on Friday night, right? A SmackDown battle. So focus on that. Take what you learned on this, focus on that. So they get 600,000 last week. Now this week, they're back in their normal time slot. Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And this show was a different AEW, right? AEW diehards are talking all about how there wasn't that much wrestling on the show. They did a lot of promos. There was so many interviews, a couple of heartfelt interviews, right? Jim Ross with the whole family intrigue, sit-down interview, loved it. Mama getting her slaps in. If you guys saw it, I won't spoil it. It's really good. Renee Paquette is sitting down with Edge. Edge is giving a heartfelt little history of him and Uncle Jay, if you will, Christian. And I thought that was so well done. Just all of the promos, the backstage beatings, like all of that took precedent this past Wednesday night on Dynamite. Where was all the wrestling? Where was all the bangers and the clangers, right? I mean, Meltzy had his little pad out. He was about to give his 4, 5, and 7 stars, but he couldn't dish out a lot of stars. Where was the wrestling, right? AEW finally acted like a wrestling company on Wednesday night. Because BC is not one of those people that was begging or yearning or pleading for more wrestling on Wednesday night. Because a wrestling show, a wrestling company, is more than just your matches. I know that's a wild concept to conceive, but it just is. The shows need to be about the stories and the character development. It just has to be. Sprinkled in there is some matches. That's the icing on the cake. Storylines, character development. That's it. That's it. And then you make them pull out their wallet to buy the pay-per-view to see the actual matches. A night of all of these incredible matches that you need to find out the outcomes, the culmination of these stories and all of this character development. AEW just wants to do a bunch of matches, right? And they want to make everybody go, this is awesome. But what happens is, over time, if you're not bringing in the new audience and you're not building anything and you're just putting on matches for the sake of matches and hoping that Meltzy gives them a lot of stars, what's going to happen is your own audience, your own tried and trues, your own diehard, they're going to walk away. And what started out at over 1 million, it ended up at 950 for so many months, 950,000 viewership. Then it leaked to 850. Then it leaked even lower. You started to see 800 in a couple weeks. It leaked into the 700,000s. Tuesday night, if you flip nights, good luck, because 600,000 is probably the most they were going to get. And that's with an Edge main event last Tuesday. Their own audience is walking away. If you keep doing the same things over and over, and expecting a different result, but you're not changing, well, you're not being just insane, you're being stupid. AEW this past Wednesday stopped being stupid. And they put together a wrestling show. I'm not saying it was the most epic of stories or most of this stuff you're going to need to tune in next week, but it's a start. They got out of that damn ring and they started to do more. I don't care if it's in the parking lot, on the roof. I don't care if you start very small like they did Wednesday and just a bunch of heartfelt face-to-face promos and interviews. But do a lot of that and you're going to build characters. Guys, during commercial break is one of the best moments on Wednesday night lately. Commercial breaks, because you see Tony Storm. It's those picture-in-pictures, and Tony Storm is in black and white. And it's one of the best character development stories of 2023. A character that was in obscurity. As much as so many of us enjoy Tony's enjoy pro wrestling. You enjoy a pasta dinner, right? You enjoy a nice night with a beautiful young lady. A nice Friday night with Miss Tony Storm. You want to be captivated by your wrestling, right? So you watch these commercials, and all of a sudden I see Tony Storm in the far right corner. And I'm like, wait a second. Papa John's can wait, right? Coca-Cola, T-Mobile, whatever commercial is playing, you can wait. What is Tony Storm doing in that right corner? And you don't even know what she's doing. She's dancing, she's hopping on a piano, she's ballerinaing, she's talking to somebody. You can't hear anything, it's in black and white. But Tony Storm is absolutely killing it. She's crushing it. And before you know it, man, Tony Storm was, again, as much as we all appreciate her work, there was nothing happening with Tony Storm. She has a championship and she's just as meaningless, it felt, on these shows than when she didn't have the championship. She loses the title, everybody moans, and then we kind of moved on because it wasn't a meaningful or memory-filled title reign. But here's Tony Storm just fucking dancing in black and white during commercials, and you're like, whoa, Tony Storm is amazing. Character development. Little things like that are not so little on these shows. Care about it. Care about it. So, they didn't do a lot of wrestling this week, and a lot of diehard fans were like, all right, well, guess what? Good luck, because you're pulling 800, 600 when it's not even on your own show, or your own night. Good luck. You know, I wouldn't be shocked if this freaking show, even on its normal night, gets 700,000. This was their own fans saying this, because they just didn't get a lot of wrestling matches. And there was too much talking, a lot of promos, a lot of backstage, face-to-face, heartfelt, personal, interviews. Well, guess what they did, guys? They popped 900,000 viewership, 901,000 viewers. So not only did they come back from last Tuesday's little measly 600, but the week before, when they were on their own Wednesday night, on their own time slot, when they scored 800 some odd thousand viewers, they even beat that. So it doesn't matter if they're not on their same night or same time slot. They beat their rating for several weeks over the last several months. 901,000. They cracked 900. That's a chore for this company lately. And they did it with stories and character development. Interesting, right? It's what BC's been saying since the company formed, since I started this channel. That's always going to pull in the most viewers. It's always going to captivate people the most. And if you really love pro wrestling matches, well, you're going to get them if you just have some patience. And you're not only going to get them, but you're going to get them with care behind it. You're going to actually be more intrigued. Here's a crazy concept. You're going to be captivated by these matches and hopefully outcomes. And hopefully what it all leads to. I was able to catch most of that show Wednesday night. And I noticed from the jump something was a little different. I like it. I like it a lot. I hope they keep doing it. If you have such a diehard, tried and true audience, they're not going to leave you just because you're trying something new and you're trying to improve yourself and get more viewers. They're not just going to ditch you. That mentality has to stop. It's the old underground band mentality, right? I believe it's still around today, but growing up, there was always those group of kids that always had to listen to the underground music, and they stuck the middle finger up at the mainstream music, right? Fuck Metallica, man, they suck. Metallica does not suck. Just because somebody can play instruments better, that's fine. You can say that they're better than, but they don't suck. They play damn good music to a lot of people. Enough to sell the amount of records that they did. And if you want to hate them for selling out and becoming mainstream and having good lives and careers, financially, they're set. Their grandchildren would be set for life. If you want to hate on that, then play your hate on that. But you can't say bands suck because they went mainstream. They grew. They wanted more. They wanted to reach more of an audience. They don't want to just sing at the local underground bowling alley that on Saturday nights has hardcore bands play. Growing up, we had a lot of those individuals, right? They always just needed to be underground. And when a band signed on to a record label, they were deemed a sellout. They sold out because they didn't want to play in front of 30 freaking bitch boy Bradens every single night. Who pay fucking $5 cover and don't buy any of the drinks. So the house doesn't win. The band is playing in front of the same 30 people they see every Saturday night. No. If you truly love the band, follow them on the journey. You know, it reminds me of a band, Stained. We used to go watch Stained every week, and we make the travel up. You know, it was a big thing up in New England, and Stained would be playing. You tell people who you're going to watch, they'd be like, "Who? What the heck is a Stained?" But it was a band that we all enjoyed. So we take the travel wherever they were playing up in New England, and we go watch them. And I mean, when you say underground, I mean this was before they signed with Limp Bizkit's label or anything like that, guys. There was no Outside, there was no It's Been a While or any like mainstream song. No, they were just like an unknown band to many people, but they were big around the areas, so we always scoped them. We liked their work, and then they just one year they just blew up. I think it was the album Break the Cycle, and they just got big, and Limp Bizkit discovered them, and they went on tour, Family Values tour, and we didn't just stop fucking listening because it's been a while, right? Because they were like a hardcore band if you listen to those first albums, and then all of a sudden on the radio you have It's Been a While, or I'm on the outside, and you're like, whoa, different, man. And you know what we did? We bought that shit, we went to those concerts, and we supported. And it was good music, too. We broadened out our own horizons. What a concept. If you're a fan of someone or something, you just don't jump off ship, man. Because you deem it a sellout. No, they're trying to grow. It's what you do as human beings, hopefully. You know? So AEW just, I've been saying this for the longest time, they have to grow. They have to, man. Because when your own tried and trues are jumping ship because the product doesn't even captivate them, you're doing something wrong. Not even just wrestling match bangers are keeping these people around. When you start losing your own audience, maybe it's time, hey, you know what? We got to start thinking about like actual, like more behind the scenes. Just go backstage, go out into the fucking parking lot, go into the street. I don't know, but let's have a real show, because a show is supposed to captivate people, whether it's a half an hour or an hour. With pro wrestling, you have 2 hours. Monday nights, you have 3 hours. Good luck with that. But you have to entertain for it. Nobody wants to watch a match after a match after a match after a match for 2 fucking hours. And it's not like it's a pay-per-view where we've been seeing like months of this build and now we have to fucking see this to the point where we'll pay money. No, we're just seeing random matches and hoping that they do cool sequences so I can yell, "This is awesome!" And then the next day, see if Melty gave it 8 stars. Anyway, very good. Very good what I saw from AEW, man. So that 900, 1,000, people are going to say, oh, they didn't pop a milli. Well, you know what? 900,000 on a show where they gambled and they listened to people like BC finally. And they popped back into the 900,000s, man. Pretty badass. Keep doing that. I promise you. I assure you. You are going to pull even more viewers going forward. That's the quickest way, the best way to finally reach your million plus on a consistent basis. Guys, I said I didn't have a lot of time, and I didn't because there's so much business to get to today. So I didn't have a lot of time to cut this show, but we are already going toward what we usually do, which is an hour, usually hour plus. But there's no way that I'm not getting to this story, man. All right, I wanted to get the actual quote for you guys because I want you to hear exactly what Jericho said about NXT defeating AEW in the way that they did it last Tuesday. For some reason, all the headlines is just talking about Jericho responding to Tony Khan unraveling after that loss to NXT last Tuesday. But there was nothing really of substance in what he said. He was just playing the role of good employee, right? Jericho just said, well, that's his company. It's not mine. If it was my company, I would say more about it, but there's nothing I can do. It's not a big deal to me. He just completely swept it underneath the rug. Jericho is never that underspoken. He is never that quiet about a situation like that, man. He was playing the good employee, and that's because Jericho is on cloud 9 in AEW. You guys have to realize that. He's making a ton of money. He's in a position where he can place himself wherever he wants. He is a locker room leader. He is in Tony Khan's left ear and right ear. Probably the... he's right there with Tony Khan. And that's not shade at all, man. If you can be what Paul Levesque McMahon was to Vincent Kennedy, Jericho always kind of wanted that role. So there was no headline there. I don't know why everyone's talking about that and not what I'm about to discuss with you guys. Because the juicy stuff is right here. This is the Jericho that we know. Right? When asked about NXT defeating them last Tuesday, this is a quote from Chris Jericho. It was just an opportunity to stick it to us with stunt casting. He calls it stunt casting. You can only bring in Cena and Undertaker and Cody and everybody else so much because nobody wants to work on their secondary show all the time. And it was a fun little, hey, fuck you, AEW. I didn't even really worry about it. So he says this was nothing more than stunt casting and a fuck you to AEW. He says, and I quote from Chris Jericho, this would be like a football game where you bring in all of your top stars from years prior and beat the other team 30-26. It's like a video game. Let's bring in Tom Brady from 5 years ago and then play him for one game against Chris Jericho. Okay, you guys won, but you only won 30-26. So don't get too far up your own ass because you didn't do that good of a job as far as crushing us. Damn. This is the Jericho, right? This is what Jericho says. This is how he speaks. Not really telling us his true feelings about Tony Khan. Come on, man. We know that's playing the role of good employee. So don't get too far up your own ass because you didn't do that good of a job as far as crushing us. And our show was better than theirs. See, this is where we kind of get a little toddlerish, right? I'm bitter. We did a better job. You suck, man. And our show was better than theirs, quite frankly. So it doesn't bother me. It's just competition, man. It's good for the fans. It's good for the companies. Now, he says it doesn't bother him, but he says this was stunt casting and a fuck you to AEW. It's like a video football game, but they didn't crush us. They only got 30-26 of a score. So don't get too far up your own ass. You did not do a good job. And then he says, but it doesn't bother me. Bro. And our show was better than theirs. I like that little last line there. He also says, all that matters is how your fans perceive you. Growing your own show, growing your revenue, and I think we've done far and beyond what they see. They keep talking about how WWE perceives them, or how they perceive that WWE perceives them. They're gonna eventually have to focus on their own product. That's the only way they're going to truly get better as time goes on. Because if you just focus on WWE, you're doomed to just doom yourself in, because history repeats itself and you can look no further back than WCW. He says, all that matters is how your fans perceive you, growing your own show, growing your revenue, and I think we've done far and beyond what they ever thought we would go. I think people who didn't like AEW thought we'd be done within 6 months, and it's been 4 years and we're bigger than ever, closer to 5 now, on the verge of another huge television deal, not so fast. And that's all that matters. So he had a lot to say about NXT defeating them. And, you can say at the very end of it, but it doesn't bother me. I don't care. But if you say all of that first, it's a little bit of a contradiction. And I believe all of you did care. Now, here's the question I would throw to you guys. Isn't this a straight up, isn't this hypocrisy and a contradiction at the highest level? He's telling WWE, don't go too, what was the exact quote? He says, don't get too far up your own ass because you didn't do a good job of crushing us. Don't get too far up your own ass, he says. But wouldn't AEW get really far up their own ass if they defeated NXT on their night? Even if you're a diehard AEW fan, isn't the answer yes? They would. It's rhetorical. I know they would. I know Chris Jericho for sure. All of the tweets or X's or whatever you're calling it today on the social doohickey machine from Tony Khan, he would be having a party the entire week. A ratings victory party. That company, it would be all they're talking about backstage. Trust me, that's how the company operates. Because they're so focused on WWE and they're so focused on just making sure that the potty shots and the digs and the shots, it's all coming from their end. And when WWE just says nothing but just beats them, man, that irks AEW to no end. The Jerichos, the Tony Khans, and that's why they say paragraphs. What do you think about Tony Khan completely unraveling and throwing WWE, not just the suits and ties, but the Cenas, the Undertakers under the bus, and saying they can't even draw anymore? And Jericho just says, it's his company. That's all he says. And then, how do you feel about NXT beating you guys? Oh, I'm going to open up paragraphs now. And then at the very end say, but it doesn't bother me. They wanted that W so badly. And this was the time to take the ass whooping and show everybody that you are adults, that you're mature enough to take the ass whooping, dust yourself off, get better, do better, and win in the future. But do not play the role of toddler after you get beat. A lot of digs here from Jericho. Alls they did was stack their deck. You can say it was a cheap way to beat AEW all you want. They knew that they're trying to get a new television deal. So they've been throwing a lot of main roster onto NXT lately, way before this night. They also knew they had baseball playoffs. Yes, 23% down in the market. Not that big of a deal anymore like it used to be. But it's still your competition for the night. You look to the left and here's baseball playoffs. You look to your right, here comes AEW, the show that's been beating you for years, kicked you off of Wednesday nights. Here comes AEW, and they have a themed event, Title Tuesday, a little mini pay-per-view that they're coming to bite into your rating. So what they did is they stacked it even more than they usually do because they did not want to lose the night. And they won. BC even admitted they went far and beyond to win the night. I agree. They won. All is fair in love and war. They won. Take the whooping. Create stars so in the future you can stack a deck like they did. Do that. And as far as saying they didn't crush you as badly as they could have, 900 plus thousand viewers to 600 is a crushing. You got whooped. But BC said from the time that number came out, take the 600. That's actually not awful. Considering a lot of things, you take the ass whooping and you take that 600 and you do better. And they did this Wednesday and they got 900 plus now. But don't become toddlers because you're not going to make yourselves look good and you're going to turn off your own viewership. You have fans that said, I'm done with AEW after the way that Tony Khan acted after that loss. Literally, I saw it all throughout the community. It's wild. You're going to turn people off when you act that way. And Tuesday night, they stacked it up. Yes, for many reasons. 900 plus thousand viewers to 600. They beat you by more than half of your total audience on that night. You pulled 600. They beat you by more than 300. So now you're going to move the goalpost and say, yeah, you whooped us, but it wasn't that bad of a whooping because you didn't hit a milli. I don't know who thought they were hitting a milli, by the way. This is a numbers-driven channel, right? Where we cover statistics, metrics, numbers in the pro wrestling world. We cover numbers, and a lot of people go, oh, Blazy, I don't want to talk about ratings. Tough, we have to. It tells us a lot about the shows, and the segments, and the trajectory, their futures of these shows and companies. Ratings tell us everything, but numbers and metrics. So I follow these metrics and these trends and these numbers and these stats. And let me tell you, at no point did I think they were popping a milli with baseball and AEW colliding with them. It was just about who's going to win, who's going to have more viewers. I don't know why people thought that NXT was scoring 1-2, 1-3 because they stacked the deck. You're acting like AEW was not coming around with a themed event. This is the company that beat NXT for years. You're acting like AEW was just going to fucking evaporate. Or just turn into a puddle of mud. And that baseball was just going to have a blackout during the time that NXT was on. No. I told you guys, BC had it at about 910 to about 970 was the window that I had. I thought it would be at the high end of 970. It ended up being at the lower end around 920 some odd. That's still where I had it. That was the window I had it. If you follow numbers, NXT fell exactly where they should have been. And they won the night. Take the whooping and be happy that you took it because you're only going to get better going forward. Hopefully. That's the way you would like it to turn out for AEW. So with Jericho saying all of this, man, these are just some more unnecessary body shots, man. You don't know if it was just a, hey, fuck you, AEW, or they just were competing with you and they stacked it and they just they took the W because they knew you guys wanted the W and you were going to gloat for the next year and a half about beating them last Tuesday. And then to say, don't get too far up your own ass. You didn't do a good job as far as crushing us. Come on, that's not needed, man. And then to say it's been 4 years. Oh no, what did he say? I think we've done far and beyond better than what they thought. Well, you don't really know what they I don't think they thought you were going to be gone in 6 months. You know, it's just it's wild what they've been able to come up with in their own dome pieces in that company about how WWE looks at them and just wants to squash them out. Even if that's the truth, concentrate on what you're doing. If you do that, you stop the potty shots. If you stop acknowledging them the way that you do, you will grow your audience. And one day in the near future, by the way, because WWE, the product is not that very good right now, not good at all. You have a very good chance of beating them in the future. Concentrate on yourself. Stop talking about everybody else. Concentrate on what you're doing to get better. Guys, I didn't have that much time to cut this show for you today, but you get me talking about pro wrestling, and you know what? Things are going to get kind of pushed back. So now I'm going to be very late for everything today. But I don't care, because the first thing I'm doing when we end this podcast, I'm going straight to Dunkin', to get an extra regular hot coffee, and then I'm going next door to the Starbucks of that Dunkin', and I'm getting their vanilla latte. I'm going to double fist those coffees, and we going to get amplified. Guys, until next... Oh, there was the SmackDown. Guys, I don't have time for the SmackDown pre. I don't. This already went over, and I'm already really late, and I have to get coffee. So, guys, it's SmackDown. I don't expect too much tonight anyway, but we'll see what they throw out to the stratosphere, and I will be with you guys tomorrow. Until next time, and there will be that next time, the SmackDown Review Amped Up Weekend Edition podcast. Look for it within the next 24 hours. I appreciate you guys big time. For now, Top Guy, I'm out. BC saying, check you. Peace.